screen, please click OK. We also would like to share our disclaimer. This session is intended to be informational and educational and does not constitute legal, medical, or financial advice. Consult your legal, healthcare, or financial advisor for advice regarding your personal situation. AARP is not responsible for the consequences of any decisions or actions taken in reliance upon or as a result of the information provided during this event. So today we are joined by Senior Research Advisor Lana Choi Alum. Lana Choi Lum is a Senior Research Advisor in AARP Research on the Advocacy, Community, and Engagement team. Her work focuses on fun and fulfillment, including travel, entertainment, events, and social connection, with particular attention to social isolation and loneliness. She has more than 20 years of research experience across academic and nonprofit settings, with prior work spanning employment, retirement savings, fraud and scams, and taxpayer satisfaction across AARP and AARP Foundation initiatives. Before joining AARP's national office, she managed federal grants under the National Science Foundation and the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, creating an intergenerational science program for OASIS Senior Service Organization. Excuse me. She also spent over 2 years managing a cadre of health volunteers in 16 states in AARP's health advocacy services in the Southeast region. She holds a doctorate and a master's degree in gerontology from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and a master's degree in sociology from Georgia State University. This lady has gone to school. Please join me in welcoming today's presenter. Lona, please share with us the, the solo aging tips.
Great. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. So I am going to share my screen. Please let me know if you see that. Great. So good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me to speak with you today. So as Jacqueline said, we're going to explore what it means to age solo in the US. So too often conversations about aging focus on limitations, risks, or what people might be lacking. I'm not saying it doesn't include these things, but it's also a story of independence, resilience, purpose, and adaptation. So our findings show that living alone later in life is not simply a housing arrangement. It's a lifestyle, a fulfilling and empowering experience. So today, I hope each of you walks away with a better understanding of both the opportunities and challenges of solo aging, and familiarize yourself with resources that might help address concerns around solo aging. So before we begin, I thought we would do a polling question. So if you could just put what you think the correct answer might be in the chat. The question is approximately how many adults age 50 and older live alone in the US? So if you selected 24 million, you're correct. Today, approximately 24 million adults age 50 and older live alone in the US. It's not a small or unusual group. It's a significant and growing segment of the population, especially as people are living longer, family structures are changing, and more adults are choosing independent lifestyles. Solo aging is becoming more common. Yet, despite its prevalence, solo aging is also misunderstood. Some people automatically associate living alone with isolation or loneliness, And what we're going to see throughout this presentation is that the reality is far more nuanced. For many people, living alone represents independence, self-determination, and the freedom to create a life that matches their values and preferences. So one of the most surprising findings in this study is how long solo agers have been living independently. And as you can see here, 4 in 10 have been living alone for 20 or more years. So it tells us that living alone is not simply a temporary phase following a divorce, loss of a spouse or partner, or other life transition. For many people, it's an established way of life and an important part of who they are. So over time, solo agers develop routines, systems, and habits that support their independence. They learn how to manage their household, cultivate relationships, and maintain their well-being and make decisions on their own. So let's do another polling question. So feel free to type your response in the chat. Which feeling is reported most often by solo agers? Feeling fulfilled, happy, in control, or at ease? So what we found, if you selected feel at ease, you're correct. When we asked how living alone makes them feel, the dominant emotions lean toward the positive. Nearly 6 in 10, 59%, say living alone makes them feel at ease, and well over half say it makes them feel in control. So these findings challenge some common stereotypes about older adults who live alone, that they might be vulnerable or isolated, yet these data point to something different. So having that sense of control becomes important as we age because it provides predictability, autonomy, and confidence. And for some solo agers, that control may be one of the greatest benefits of their lifestyle. So in addition to feeling at ease and in control, over 2 in 5 describe themselves as feeling happy and confident, while 3 in 10 say they feel fulfilled. And what stands out is that many solo agers are enjoying their lifestyle. So when participants were asked about the single best aspect of living alone, one theme emerged above all others: freedom and autonomy. And as you can see here, more than 1/3 said this was the greatest benefit. And I think the participant quote on this slide captures that sentiment perfectly. Having the freedom to do what you want when you want. That freedom may include small decisions like what to eat for dinner, what television show to watch, as well as larger decisions about travel, finances, hobbies, and daily routines. Other things that solo agers shared as the best things about living alone were peace and quiet, independence, control and decision making, and fewer, but others said no responsibility for others, personal space and comfort, or privacy. Oops. While the overall story is largely positive, it would be incomplete if we ignored what the challenges were. So our study found that 1 in 5 solo agers report feeling lonely, and smaller shares report feelings of anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, and sadness. And last year, we conducted a national study on loneliness among adults age 45 and older and found that 4 in 10 are lonely. And this was an increase from 35% in both 2010 and 2018. So that 40% represents nearly 58 million people. And it's important to note that loneliness and living alone are not the same thing. Living alone is a household status, and loneliness is a subjective feeling. Some people who live alone may feel connected to others, while others may live with family members or other people and still feel lonely. For example, in our loneliness study, we conducted some interviews and we heard from a man who was married but said he felt lonely because every time he came home from work, his wife would go straight to the TV and spend evenings there instead of with him. Next poll question. So we talked earlier about the best thing about living alone. Now, what do you think solo agers most identify as the worst thing about living alone? Is it lack of companionship, financial challenges, loneliness and isolation, or boredom and lack of motivation? Feel free to type in what you think the correct answer might be. So the correct answer is loneliness and isolation. When participants were asked about the worst aspect, 40% say loneliness or isolation. And the quote from one solo ager says, "The worst thing about living alone is being lonely when there is nothing to do and not going out with family or friends." Our 2025 loneliness study found that more than a third of adults age 45 and older say they would like to be more socially connected. However, many report barriers such as lack of time, fear of rejection or anxiety, and even lack of confidence. And so the lesson here is that we really need to be intentional about our relationships. On the one hand, solo agers highly value their independence and autonomy, but also recognize that maintaining social connections requires effort and intention. And one of the most encouraging findings from this study is that many solo agers give their health a positive rating. And as you can see here, nearly 2/3 rate their physical health as good or excellent, and an even larger share, more than 8 in 10, rate their mental health positively. So these findings are important because they challenge another common misconception about people who live alone later in life, that they're struggling physically or emotionally. Instead, what we see here is a population that is generally doing quite well in these areas. And it's especially noteworthy that mental health ratings exceed physical health ratings. And so it reinforces what we've seen in the earlier slides, that many solo agers have developed lifestyles that provide them with a sense of autonomy, confidence, and fulfillment. And at the same time, these findings should not lead us to assume that good health will always continue without planning or effort. It creates an opportunity to think proactively about tomorrow. And I'll talk more about that later. So another aspect of health that we don't always talk about is our social health. What relationships we have, our social connections. And as you can see here, more than half of solo agers rate their social health as either excellent or good. So this finding challenges the assumption that people who live alone have weak social networks. And so it also reinforces the idea that living alone and being socially connected are not mutually exclusive. And one reason solo agers are able to maintain strong social lives is that they draw connection from multiple sources. They've built meaningful support systems that extend beyond the traditional household structure. So, as you can see here, friends rank highest as a source of joy and fulfillment, followed closely by hobbies, family, and physical activity. So, social connection isn't dependent on one single relationship or activity. Instead, it comes from a combination of experiences and people. And I would say that individuals who do have multiple avenues for connection tend to be more resilient, especially when life circumstances change. So if one source of connection becomes less available, for example, if a friend moves away, a family member relocates, or a favorite activity ends, other connections can continue to provide support and meaning. And although many solo agers report positive health and strong well-being, they do worry about losing the very things they value most. That's independence, mobility, and self-sufficiency. And as you can see here, nearly 7 in 10 are concerned about becoming dependent on others, excuse me, and more than 6 in 10 worry about losing physical strength or stamina. And so these concerns are understandable because independence is one of the defining benefits of living alone. When people think about the future, they're not necessarily worried about today. They are wondering how they can preserve that freedom and control that matters so much to them. And so, one thing I'm going to be talking about is how important it is to plan, prepare, and be proactive before a crisis occurs. So let's do another poll question. Feel free to type in what you think the correct answer might be. What financial concern was reported most often by solo agers? Was it affording any paid care or help you might need, or not having enough money for retirement? Both answers were almost identical. About 4 in 10 worry about not having enough money to support themselves through retirement, and a similar share worry about being able to afford paid care or assistance if they need it in the future. And these concerns are understandable because some solo agers may not have a significant other to share financial responsibilities, caregiving costs, or unexpected expenses. And for many adults, financial security represents more than just money. It represents freedom, flexibility, and choice. And it also affects where we live, the healthcare we can access, the services that we can afford, and our ability to maintain that independence that we value. I was just reading an article in USA Today yesterday and learned that in a study by the Alliance Center for the Future of Retirement, 67% of Americans worry more about running out of money than death. So it reflects this growing anxiety that's driven by high inflation, rising healthcare costs, and even long-term care costs. But the encouraging news is that financial preparedness can be built gradually. Small actions, such as creating a budget, building up emergency savings, Understanding what your retirement income sources are can help reduce uncertainty and increase confidence. And as we think about these concerns, the next few slides focus on practical strategies and resources that can help solo agers prepare for the future with greater confidence and peace of mind. So, throughout the presentation, we've explored opportunities and challenges that come with solo aging, and we've seen that many solo agers are thriving. They value their independence, report positive health and well-being, and maintain meaningful connections. At the same time, we've seen that they have legitimate concerns about future health, maintaining independence, affording retirement, and taken together, these findings point us toward several key priorities, as you can see here, that can help support a fulfilling and successful experience of aging alone. So as you look at this slide, think of these priorities not as a checklist, but as a framework and how they all work off of each other. So for example, with financial security, this supports choice and flexibility. Ensure that you have saved enough, understand your current sources of income, questions you might ask yourself. How long will you work? Will you re-career? And then with health, good health helps preserve independence. So things like sleep, exercise, managing stress, seeking preventative care, they all play a role. And self-awareness helps people align their actions with their values and purpose. A question is, what is your life purpose? How can you make a difference on those around you? And then with adaptability and flexibility, adaptability allows you to navigate inevitable life changes with resilience. And then social networks, which is really, really important. They offer both emotional and practical support for people. Whether you're looking for new friends, activities, or opportunities to meet like-minded people, this helps strengthen your overall well-being. And then there's religion and spirituality. This is a connection to something that is larger than yourself, often providing meaning, comfort, perspective during challenging times. Whether it's a God in the traditional sense or a belief in a higher power, is there something bigger than yourself that you can count on or turn to support? So these priorities strengthen each other and create a strong foundation. So the next several slides, what I'm going to share is a variety of AARP tools, programs, and resources that align with some of the themes I've been talking about. As I walk through these resources, I encourage you to think about them not as solutions for a future problem, but as tools that can help support well-being right now. As I mentioned earlier, one thing that people want to avoid is to wait until a challenge arises before you begin planning. So think about which resources might help strengthen the area where you feel less prepared. Is it health and wellness, financial planning? Is it housing and aging in place? Is it caregiving and future support? Or is it social connection and community engagement? So one of the greatest strengths of preparing for solo aging is recognizing that our future independence is closely tied to our health. I'm sure all of you know that. The good news is that many of the actions that support healthy aging can begin today, often with small, manageable steps. So the health tools and calculators can help individuals assess important aspects of their health today. So I've just listed a few examples here. There's a health savings account calculator that compares traditional health plan with health savings accounts. There's a Medicare summary notice. It explains how it's a quarterly statement showing Medicare Part A and B healthcare coverage claims. It's not a bill, but shows you the services and supplies that have been billed to the program, as well as how much Medicare paid and how much you owe. And then there's a Medicare Q&A tool, which is an AI tool where you can ask questions about Medicare. And then, of course, there's Staying Sharp, which provides articles, brain healthy recipes, and a cognitive assessment, which you can collect baseline data and then test yourself every so many months or on an annual basis, as well as games to help exercise your mind. And it's important to understand that maintaining health is only one piece of the equation. Many solo agers also think about what happens if they ever need assistance or caregiving support in the future. So when people hear the word caregiving, they often think about caring for a spouse, a parent, or a loved one. But for solo agers, caregiving planning often involves another important question. Who will advocate for me if I need care someday? So this is why advanced planning matters so much. AARP provides resources such as advanced directive forms by state. There's also a long-term care cost calculator that allows individuals to estimate the costs of various care items, including nursing home care, assisted living facilities, adult day services, home-based care. And so having this type of information early can help you make informed decisions long before you might need care. And then there's a resource tool like CareLike, which is a provider search tool. You type in your zip code and it provides a list of things like housing options in your area, including assisted living facilities, independent living facilities, skilled nursing care, continuing care retirement communities in your area. And then it also looks at care at home options, especially if you want to age in place. So what home healthcare options are there? What, if you're no longer driving, what transportation options are available in my area? And then medical services like the nearest hospital, hospice, neurologists, specific types of doctors, and then family caregiving events and support in your area. So I want to emphasize how important it is to identify trusted friends, family members, neighbors, or professional resources beforehand so that you can be sure that important decisions reflect your wishes. So a question for you is, have you identified someone who could serve as a healthcare advocate or emergency contact if you needed assistance? If independence is one of the greatest benefits of solo aging, financial security is one of the key factors that helps preserve that independence over time. So earlier in the presentation, we saw concerns about retirement income and paying for future care as leading worries facing solo agers. And these concerns are definitely understandable. Financial planning can feel overwhelming, particularly when individuals are making decisions on their own. And so that's why practical tools can be so valuable. AARP offers resources such as retirement planning calculators, household budgeting tools that look at You type in, what your income is, any debt you might have, what your utilities are, how much you're spending on food and general expenses, insurance costs, maintenance and medical costs. So it takes all of that into consideration and helps you to budget based on the income that you have coming in. And then also, it's important to note that these tools don't replace professional advice when it's needed, but they can help start important conversations and gain confidence in planning. Other tools include, they're not listed here, but there's a credit card payoff calculator. So if you have debt or if you have student loan debt, there's a student loan repayment tool. There's an interview advisor tool, which has tips on how to find an advisor. The goal is making progress. And so every decision that people make today, whether it's increasing savings, paying down debt, or creating an emergency fund, it leads to greater flexibility and peace of mind later in life. And so beyond finances, the places where we live have a major influence on our ability to age independently. So with these next resources, you see our home and community tools. Oftentimes when you're thinking about planning for aging, you focus on finances, healthcare, yet the design of our homes and our communities can have just as much impact on how successfully we age. In our home and community preferences study, we found that 3 in 4 adults age 50 and older want to stay in their current homes and communities. And this is something that we've seen year after year in fielding this study. So AARP provides resources such as the Livability Index and the Home Fit Guide to help individuals evaluate whether their homes and their communities support long-term independence. So the Livability Index, you type in your zip code, it helps people understand how well their community supports needs such as transportation, housing, healthcare access, and opportunities for engagement. It's a great resource, especially if you're thinking about moving into a new home in a new area. The Home Fit Guide offers practical situations for making homes safer and more comfortable as people age. Many of these modifications are relatively simple and inexpensive, yet they can significantly reduce any barriers and help support aging in place. And so for solo agers, this thoughtful planning around housing can preserve independence, reduce risk, and allow people to continue living where they feel most comfortable and also connected. And next, I want to highlight our social connection resources. We've seen that living alone does not necessarily mean being socially disconnected, but we do know that maintaining those connections often requires intention and ongoing effort. So AARP offers numerous opportunities for people to build and strengthen social connections. As you can see here, AARP has an events hub, which offers in-person and virtual events in your area. Again, you can type in your zip code here, and then different opportunities to volunteer. This provides great opportunities to connect with others. And then online communities and programs designed to bring people together right where you live in California or even in other states. So specifically for people who are here from California, there's a podcast in Clear Terms with AARP California, and there's also an AARP California Facebook page. In addition to that, we have additional social resources where you can connect with others in other ways. AARP, June and July is typically our social connections theme month. So we have Boost Your Social Life Challenge, offering ways for people to connect with others, including games, learning opportunities, articles, and specific Facebook groups. There's, for example, the Girlfriend Social Club, which is directed at women 40 and older. There's also the Ethels, which is directed at women who are 60 and older. These are all different opportunities to build connections around shared interest. And the key is finding activities that feel authentic and center around something that you enjoy. And so, with that, I'd like to just say that solo aging is not simply about living alone. It's really about creating meaningful, connected, and independent and fulfilling lives. Thank you. Oh, I don't hear you.
I think you're muted,
Oh,
Jacqueline.
It helps when you put your microphone down. Is that better?
yes,
Yes.
I can definitely hear you.
Okay. Sorry. That was an excellent, excellent presentation. A lot of really good resources. So, Sarita, I know there are some questions in the chat. Can you share those with us for Lana?
Yes, definitely. That was a very good presentation, Lorna. So
Thank
we
you.
have a comment. I'm going to read that first. Again,
Oh, I think you're breaking
so
up. Or is it just
says,
me?
No, no. Yeah, she was breaking up and freezing.
okay. Oh dear. Yes, I am getting a message that my internet connection is unstable. Let's try that again. So
Yeah,
it says a
we hear you.
lot of the numbers may depend on the decade of the solo ager. Physical health turns out to be different in the 70s than that from the 60s, and also from going from 80s to 90s. So, do you have any information on that?
Well, I do know that, we saw that the challenges, how people are, how people rate their physical health and their mental health. And we do see that when it comes to challenges, those who are in their 70, in their older ages, that physical health becomes more of a challenge. And I would think that things like finances or the financial challenges, people who are already in retirement, those kinds of things are less of a challenge. But what I
Makes
do want to
sense.
stress is, especially for those on the younger age spectrum, how important it is to start planning now. If you're still working, think about what you're doing to build up your retirement savings, looking at your debt, and even, you know, clicking on some of these calculators just to make sure, based on your current spending, is how that's going to work out as you get older.
Okay, and that leads me into financial well-being that you were talking about on slide 17. There's a question here. It says, is there a breakdown on these statistics by age? I think it's the previous one.
Um, uh,
17? I put down on slide 17. Yes, this one.
there
Is there
is,
a breakdown?
I don't have it in front of me right now. Um, I do think that for people who are currently working, it's more of an issue. And, you've heard of people who that's the reason why they're continuing to work. They're working longer than they expected, especially, what we're seeing with our economy now, things, higher prices. Some people are finding that they are having to go back to work because they're concerned about having enough money when they retire. And then, of course, I've heard of people who, they say they will be working forever, that they won't be able to retire. And so we do have resources like with AARP Foundation, public benefit programs, and again, different ways to help people, wind down their debt, how to better manage that. Those are great resources and tools so that people can take these small, manageable steps so it doesn't look so overwhelming.
Thank you. That actually kind of leads into the next comment or question. Maxine here wants to know, has there been much research like ARP foundations, etc., on co-housing, co-living, the pros and cons for seniors, locations, National Association? Should they just go to the ARP link? Where would be the best way to find out?
So every 3 years, AARP does a study. It's called the Home and Community Preferences Survey. And so it does show different ways that people might be able to save money. One particular option is, and it varies by state, is ADUs, accessory dwelling units, as a way to save money, where it's either, creating a separate housing unit in an existing location, whether if you were to move in with another family member, or if you created something like that, if you wanted to age in place, creating that, on your property. Another possibility is, you've heard, multi-generational living. So that's another way that people are, approaching, different kind of living arrangements as a way to save money.
Thank you. We have, it's kind of comment and a question. With with such a high percentage of participants being women and in varied locations, it says, I am curious if these results are representative of the general population or if they reflect a specific gender-based and geographic perspective. How do these findings account for potential demographic imbalances in the participant pool?
So this particular study was with our Foresight 50 Plus Omni. It is a representative panel of adults 50 and older. So it is representative across demographics like gender, age, income, race, ethnicity. And it was done it is a national study. So yes, representative of 50 plus adults.
Thank you. The question we have here is, so where do solo agers fit in the 1 in 3 older adults who struggle to meet the basic needs that AARP Foundation is always talking about?
Oh, those who can you repeat the question again?
Yes,
Like,
yes. It says, so where do solo agers fit in the 1 in 3 older adults struggle to meet their basic needs that the AARP Foundation is always talking about?
I would think that it varies, depending on where you are in that age spectrum, whether you're working or not working. I think that we see people in all those different situations, and I think it really depends on how much planning you've done to prepare for, you know, health, potential health needs, or if you find yourself in emergency situation where you need extra financial assistance. Um, and then also if you find yourself, um, without, because you're living alone, not having friends or family around you, um, it really requires that added planning and being intentional, to make sure that um, your, financial well-being, your social well-being, and your physical well-being are all taken care of.
Thank you. And Martin wants to know, and I think this is referring to the one of the last slides where you showed there were groups for social groups for different groups of people, like the Ethel and all those. He says, why aren't they groups for men, or are they all co-ed? Or
That
do
is
you
an
know any
excellent,
groups?
excellent question. I know that, like, for example, the AARP California, the state Facebook groups are definitely co-ed. Um, the Ethel groups are definitely geared towards women, and there are different opportunities for men to engage. If you go to the social connection site, I believe it's www.aerp.org/connect. There are different opportunities that are open to everybody, that you can connect, whether it's going to an AERP in person or virtual event. But I definitely hear you, um, that there needs to be something, a platform, for you to connect with other men, or other women, and it could very well be around common interests, whether you play sports, or if you play games, or if you just play pickleball or something like that. I would think that maybe on a Facebook page, there would be a way to connect with other people who are like you. I don't know, Jacqueline or Sarita, if you have any suggestions based on, like activities within the state of California or other states.
You can always go to the library and join a book club or something like that. That's a good way to meet people as well.
That's a great idea.
Um,
Yes.
but I think we're running out of time here, but you've got a whole bunch of thank yous and good presentation comments and very helpful resources. So I think from here, I'll turn it over to Jacqueline.
Okay. Thank you, Lana. Again, an amazing presentation. A lot of resources myself. And the AARP Connect link has been put in the chat. So it was good that that came up.
Great.
So thank you again. So everyone, join us next month for Tea and Coffee Tuesdays on August 11th for a special presentation on American Mahjong 101. Join us next month for Tea and Coffee Tuesdays on August 11th also, as we explore one of the fastest growing and most social strategic games around, American style Mahjong. Guest speaker will be Ronnie Rice, the marvelous Mrs. Maj will introduce participants to the histories, basics, and unique appeal of Mahjong while sharing why so many people are discovering this fun, friendship, and lifelong learning that comes with the game. If you would like to view previous programs or learn more about the Tea and Coffee Tuesdays monthly series, check out the link that has been placed in the chat. Again, thank you so much, Delana, for today's excellent presentation. Thank you to our Tea and Coffee Tuesday volunteers, Sarah, Sarita, I'm sorry, Connie and Joyce, as well as the AARP staff. And of course, thank you all for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed today's presentation. I am your AARP volunteer host, Jacqueline. This concludes today's program. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day and an amazing week. And thank you for sharing with us today. That concludes our program.